Our project is on CRC Cards. This is by Zach Heiner, Anthony Lasley, and Dennis Bingham. So what exactly are CRC Cards? CRC stands for Class Responsibility Collaboration. And as you can tell from the acronym, CRC is a simple and powerful object-oriented analysis technique. What this does is it allows collaborators, whether they be the user or developers or managers, to be able to sit in together and develop or see how classes relate to each other. The way that they're structured or built is that the collaborators take index cards and they write the classes, and it's very simple, 3 pieces: the name of the class, the responsibilities that the class has, and the actual collaborators, meaning that the other classes or functions that the class itself works with, on the card, and then they place them in order or in a pattern so that they can move them around. The nice thing about this is it allows those contributors to see how the classes work and are connected to each other. And this gives them a unified understanding of how those classes are going to work within the project that they're working on. This is an example of an individual CRC card. As you can see, it's very simple. You have the class at the top, the responsibility, meaning the data and the functions, on the left side, and the collaborators on the right side, meaning the other classes that collaborate with this certain class. Now, this is an example of a CRC session. What we have here is a rough version of the classes that are involved in our project. And as you can see, they're outlined from profile on down in a rough estimate of how they may collaborate with each other. The nice part about this is if you were involved in this CRC session, you would be able to mix these cards around. And a CRC session involves somewhere between 4 and 6 people. No fewer than 4, no more than 6. And so you're able to move these cards around and see how the different classes interact with one another so that you can edit or alter the way that the functions inside or the actual collaborators work with each other. It gives you an overall view of how the classes are going to interact in the program and gives you a better idea of how they're going to work well with each other and what's not going to work well. And so you're able to modify the things that you need to modify while keeping the things that are working great.
Some pros to using CRC cards. The cards themselves match up with the class and describe the different properties that project-related objects have in common. They also facilitate development, discussion, and evaluation of object-oriented models. Using the CRC cards, the contributors can participate in role play and act out the functionality of a class and have a visual of how the other classes interact with one another. I actually thought that this one was really interesting because the contributors can interact with one another acting as a class, and so they can see how every action and data point interacts with other functions and classes within the system, which allows them to remove either redundant code or unused code, or even maybe better the code and have it so it's more optimized. The CRC cards also allow contributors to have an open discussion of static structures in the system. They also allow contributors to learn for themselves and understand class names, responsibilities, and collaborations, so everyone's on the same page. CRC cards also promote open discussion of dynamic structures, and this kind of helps them with the what-if exploration. Some cons to CRC cards. They don't do well when it comes to groups that are larger or smaller than 4 to 6. If the group's too small, there's not enough diversity within the group, and if the group is too large, it's really hard for them to come to a consensus. It can be difficult for contributors to get lost in the details or overlook important items, or both. CRC cards can blur the difference between objects and classes. And this kind of leads into number 4. The contributors can get confused whether they are talking about an object of the system or if they're talking about an object in the real world. So let's say a system uses a librarian class to handle, checking books in and out. They could get confused between the librarian class in the system and the actual librarian at the library who's going to use that system. Another con is when using a singleton class, it can be confusing to some contributors, especially if those contributors are brand new to this style of development.
We recommend using CRC cards early on in the design process, mostly when you're at the stage where you have an idea of what you want to do, but you still need to hammer out some of the details. They really work out best when you're trying to figure out how things will be divided up amongst different classes or components. It's really good to get multiple versions of your classes made up on these cards before going ahead and implementing them, rather than spending time and writing out code only to change your mind later on and have to scrap all that work. Another nice thing about CRC cards is you can move them around and see different kinds of relations you want to create between the cards. Writing them out and hammering out all the details allow you to figure out what you want the different classes to work and finalize the details. Finalize the idea of what you want to do when you write the code. Another way CRC cards can help is if you're in a situation where you have a program with lots of code that you don't quite understand and you're tasked with cleaning it up. When you're going through the code, you can make some CRC cards. Later on, when you go back, you can read through them and notice any redundancies or if certain classes don't really contribute a whole lot. This way, you are able to go back and clean up those specific things. Now, here are some of our test questions. They're pretty straightforward and the answers are found within this video. First, true or false? Cards are best used in the later stages of the design process. Here's the second one. An advantage of CRC cards is A, you can deal out all the classes to different members of the team, B, helps to write the code for you, or C, allows contributors to develop, discuss, and evaluate object-oriented models. And finally, our third question. What does CRC stand for in CRC cards? Is it A, creative reliable cards, B, class responsibility collaboration, or C, class retention constructs? Thank you very much.